requirements in the past and then go and building a piece of hardware that they think is needed. We've actually approached working with industry in a totally different way, which is in our world we have certain ways we can engage the private sector in a fair and open competition way. And we've been putting out things like what we call requests for information or broad agency announcements, or PAAs, what we call them. We have our legal mechanisms that we do have to work with, but try to seek input through multiple areas of how industry sees the future, and not just how NASA sees the future. So we've done that in very visible ways, like commercial cargo and commercial crew. And now we've applied with all U.S. cargo that's going up on our commercial cargo flights with SpaceX and Orbital. And we'll actually be following on that under competition right now with the next cargo contracts we have. We just awarded our crew capability to SpaceX and Boeing, and they'll be flying within the next 2 years, and some of the new crew rotations in addition to the Soyuz that we use today with Russia. And that was, we did that over everything, so we did that overnight. That was far from the truth. It took us 7 to 10 years to get there with us in the industry. Even SpaceX took 7 years from initial design to first flight of their capability they have today. So it wasn't an overnight thing that occurred. Rockets are still hard regardless of who builds them. But we work with industry on how to design that acquisition approach and how NASA works with it in a very interactive way. In addition to that, we've been talking about this asteroid mission that's out there. So we actually did a series of interactions with the commercial industry there on things like solar electric propulsion. So industry's really interested in solar electric propulsion for like upper stages to move communication satellites and such around. So how do we size what we need for a large mission like our asteroid that is also compatible with what they need for their industry use? So we explored that through a PAA. We ran another competition called Lunar Catalyst, where we actually said, okay, we've built a bunch of in-house expertise on landers. How do we share that with industry in order to accelerate their ability to land on the moon? And we actually selected 3 companies, and I'll talk about those as well. Even things like Mars Telecom RFI. We actually put out a thing to the telecommunications industry and said, how should we buy telecom services for Mars from you? And they suggested some outcomes there. And then most recently, we did a next step BA, which is looking at habitation and some additional deep space CubeSats and some even more advanced propulsion systems that industry may be willing to look at. So people talk about, oh, like, how are we going to get from here to Mars then? Well, the answer is we don't know, and that's okay. We know the near-term decisions we need to do, and we know kind of how all that feeds together all the way to Mars. But if we were to lay out an exact path from here to 25 years from now, we will be wrong, first off. You can't predict technology that far in advance, I'd argue. And nor can you take advantage of all the changes that will occur over that period of time. So we started an effort called Evolvable Mars Campaign, and all it is a series of trade analysis. So we've been going back and revisiting our design reference missions from Mars and all that, and finding all the problems with it, and then reanalyzing those trades. So how do we didn't understand there was water on Mars and the Moon. So now how does the effect of water on Mars and the Moon change our entire philosophy? So you don't have to launch everything from Earth to take it to Mars, but rather you can at least make your propellants actually for your return trip to Mars on the surface of Mars. That's very feasible at this point. But maybe even lunar resources could be your outbound fuel to get you there in the first place. So I've been looking at that. Other Mars concepts originally were big, large, monolithic habitats that we put big engines on, we send them all the way out, and then we bring them all the way back. But what happens if we modularize that and split up the habitation? There's other challenges, like complex things like hyperbolic rendezvous and those kind of things, but maybe we can actually think about different architectures. So we've been reanalyzing all that work as well. Skip over this. So some of the things we looked at are, could the moons of Mars actually be a good stopping point for us? Could they, and so we've been looking at the Mars moons, Phobos and Deimos, quite a bit in the past year. They have abundance of resources, water, potentially in the 20% range or more on Phobos. If you actually are in orbit around Mars and you didn't want to go to the surface right away and you wanted to snuggle up with Phobos, it would actually block 30 to 60% of the radiation while you're in orbit, because you got Phobos on one side and Mars is 60% of your sky on the other. It's a nice radiation shielding effect. So we've been looking at that, transportation analysis, redoing a lot of our trajectory analysis, and looking at optimization for that. Staging, where do we build all this stuff? You don't just launch it all with one ship. You have to actually assemble it all in space, and where is it the best point to do that? So we've been looking at all this and even like co-manifesting of cargo on the large launch vehicle. On the trajectory piece, or a place to do assembly, this is an interesting chart that I don't know if it'll come over in the graphic here as much, but online, you'll see it. Basically, it's a graphical depiction of how much energy it takes to go, or the gravity well, basically. In fact, it's probably an easier way to say it. So Earth here is obviously at the deepest point, surface of Earth. The Moon has its own gravitational point here. Lagrange points on either side are actually relatively neutral. That's why they're Lagrange points. And so you can see how much energy it takes to stay at any given location. ISS is here. Geosynchronous satellites are here. That's why GEO stay there with almost no energy at all. And what we've been looking at is staging points, what we call lunar distant retrograde orbit, which is basically this intersection point around the Moon. It's about 75,000 kilometers or so. That basically takes almost no energy to stay at. And you're fundamentally stable with no energy input for 80 years once you put something in that orbit. That's an intriguing place to put things and assemble things. It's pretty far out there, but it's within a 3 or 4 day trip home. But you don't need a bunch of energy to keep it there either. So when you hear NASA's talking about parking an asteroid there too, lunar distant retrograde orbit, we wanted to park the asteroid there so it didn't go anywhere. And even if it went anywhere, it wasn't that big of a deal. Actually, it's not that big of an asteroid. The size of the asteroid we're dragging back, those size of the asteroids actually come by Earth pretty regularly. And a couple of them, 2 to 3 per year, actually hit us. And they burn up to 100%. But this is a really stable orbit location where we can park and assemble large structures. And more importantly, it's a place that we can actually park things when we bring them back and reuse them as well. There's a bunch of things we want to be able to advance, all the different capabilities. Habitation, we want to actually spend some time actually getting the reliability and life support systems and all those kind of things ready. We are building the new SLS rocket, an Orion capsule, but we need a lot of other systems, and we need a way to get those up there. So one of the pieces of our analysis shows that we need to be able to co-manifest cargo. So whenever we're building the new upper stage of the SLS here, we wanted to be able to fly more than just Orion. So how do we make sure we can fit Orion, but then also launch cargo? So we've been analyzing different co-manifested options. You could take the big rocket SLS and put an outer planet mission on it. People were looking at Europa and those kind of things, and you could get out to Europa and cut multiple years off your mission duration. Or you could launch Orion with an initial habitation system that would extend its days. Right now, Orion's built for 4 people for 21 days in deep space. This kind of module added onto it, now we're at 30 to 60 days in deep space. And if you build this like the right Lego pieces, you can snap them together and actually build up something that would be on 300-day plus duration over a period of time. You could also, this is ARB, sorry for the acronyms, but Asteroid Retrieval Bus. It's an electrical propulsion system, a very large one that carries 14 tons of xenon. in it. And this kind of propulsion bus could get you back and forth or back to Mars in 2 to 3 years, which is great for cargo, but not that great for humans. And then if you don't fly around with it, then you could start looking at multiple habitation of lander situations, or the next generation telescopes that are 4 or 5 times the size of what Hubble was. And then even very, very large habitation systems and inflatable structures that would be basically almost the equivalent volume of the entire space station but launched in one launch, to give you a perspective of how big that is. And that would fit on there. So what is this going to look like from a